The 80s, the world's favorite decade to look back on with rose-tinted glasses. Everything was just so much better back then. Arcades, fashion, the 1989 takedown of the Russian mafia based in Miami by one man in a rooster mask slaughtering them all one by one. Wait a second. The fashion was terrible! Hotline Miami and Hotline Miami 2 Wrong Number are some of the most renowned indie games ever made. The aesthetic, music, gameplay, and story were all executed in such a way that no other game will ever be able to truly replicate, nor should any even try. Everything these games tried to accomplish was done almost perfectly, going above and beyond what they needed to be. Beating these games was one of the most frustrating, yet exhilarating gaming experiences I've ever had, only elevated by a surprisingly compelling story. Welcome to the Spoons Arcade, where we don't review games, we explore and analyze what makes them so unique. So let's take a look at exactly how everything blended together to create the oh-so-sweet Hotline Miami Collection. Now, obviously I'm talking about two games here, but they're so similar in nearly every aspect that I can't justify making two separate videos. This section is where most of their differences will be on display, since they do have certain gameplay distinctions between them. For the most part, however, they operate on the same base mechanics. The entire game is based on level memorization. You die in one hit and can instantly restart from the beginning of the floor, so getting good is all about how well you can remember the room layout and where the opponents are, and then coming up with a plan to make it through unscathed. How can you manage that exactly? By slaughtering everyone in your path with no mercy. There are a variety of ways you can approach this. Without a weapon in your hands, you can knock down the enemies and bash their head in once they're on the ground. This isn't your best option, however, as it takes too much time and you're vulnerable to attacks. Instead, you should pick up one of the weapons lying around. With these, you can land a killing blow in a single strike, or throw the weapon to knock down an enemy far away, or kill them from a distance, depending on the weapon. Your best choice for the job, though, are most certainly the guns. With these, you can cut through a group of enemies like butter. They make a ton of noise though, so you'll give away your location if you fire off a shot without a silencer. Then again, that could also be used to your advantage by shooting the people running at you, granted that you still have ammo. At the beginning of each stage in the first game, you're able to choose an animal mask that will grant you a specific gameplay change. There are two that you can unlock per stage, one for beating it, and one that's hidden somewhere. The further you progress, the more benefits you'll gain from the masks. For example, towards the beginning of the game, you'll get the Graham mask that lets you move fast. Then, towards the end, you get the Brandon mask that lets you move even faster. Not every mask in the game is a blatant upgrade of a different one, but I think you get the point. Which mask you choose will vastly change how you approach each stage. Experimenting with each one is highly encouraged and will help you eventually find one that complements your playstyle. There is another aspect to the first game that I haven't touched upon, but I will talk about in the spoiler section later on. I'm sure if you have played the game, you know exactly what I'm referring to. The second game operates differently from the first. You can't choose between every mask in the game per stage. Some stages you don't get any choice at all, and the ones you do will limit you to 3 or 4. In Hotline Miami 2, the levels are designed to be played by a specific character or small collection of characters. This limits the player's creativity with how they can approach the game as a whole, yet it does offer variety that many likely didn't receive from the first game by simply sticking to one mask. I'm not sure how to feel about this change exactly. From a storytelling perspective, I think it was a great change that allowed for a more complex and compelling story. However, I think I prefer the mask system from the first game over the character system from the second when it comes to gameplay. The greatest drawback from the new system is that you may be forced into playing a character you don't want to, or thinking that the level would be more enjoyable as someone else. For instance, I don't enjoy the Evan Wright levels as much as I would if I didn't have to kill 2 people from a knockdown to actually play the game like the rest of the characters. I appreciate what they tried to do with him not being a killer, and I'm certain it works for other people, but I'm also certain it doesn't work for others as well. Or perhaps some people don't like one of the other characters they have no choice but to play as. If you do enjoy everyone in this game, then that's great, but overall, I think this system was a downgrade. There are certainly highlights to it, such as the final level, which would not have hit as hard with the first game's structure, but the gameplay suffers as a whole. Even though I'm bashing on it, the game is still fun as hell. It has the same high-speed action as the first, it just simply falls a little flat in comparison. And that's about all I have to say about gameplay. There will be a few more comments made about it once we reach spoiler territory, but until then, let's talk about the thing that really caught my eye and made me play this series. The game's insanely impressive art style and incredible music tracks. Indie games are an insanely competitive market. They have to convince you that your money is better well spent on their games instead of one of the big AAA titles or even other indie titles. Even though they cost considerably less in most cases, indie games still need something special about them to entice the player. The Hotline Miami Collection is no different, and as I'm sure you can already tell from the gameplay footage and music in this video, they pulled no punches. 80s era synthwave, as I like to call it, is what the team at Nation Games chose to turn up to 11 in their series. When the first game was released, it was at the height of the synthwave genre. This music genre came to prominence in the 2000s as a way to remember the 80s, most likely due to the music reminding people of Blade Runner and as such the entire generation, despite the fact synthwave was never really popular in the 80s. The music then grew to inspire an art style that the Hotline Miami Collection dove into headfirst. Flashing, highly saturated colors, text popping off the screen, everything seeming to move fast, and the unexplainable feeling of an arcade game. All of these things put together triggered something in our collective consciousness to make us think of the 80s, specifically the high-octane craziness of the time period. So, for a game all about taking down the Russian Mafia in 1989 Miami, there aren't many other styles that could fit the bill. And like I said, it was this style that made me play these games at all. I had never seen anything like it, and I honestly haven't seen another game quite like it since. The song you're hearing right now is called Miami Disco, and it's the song that truly convinced me this series was something special. Because not only is it such a great song, but it plays over this level. Once I played this stage, I knew I made the right choice and picked something truly special. It's an adrenaline-pumping assault on the senses, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And finally, the style suits the game's story in a major way. The Hotline Miami Collection hides several tales that become over-the-top thrill rides due to the style it's presented in. Yet, that same synthwave style makes the more emotional beats hit even harder, since it's the few times the game slows down. Now, this is the point of the video where I'm going to be talking about spoilers. I'm going to be showing late game footage for both games and analyzing the story they present. If you want to play these games at all, I highly recommend skipping to the final section of this video to hear my final thoughts and then coming back here once you're done. If you have already played both games, or you don't want to play them for some reason, then stay tuned. It's time to do what I do best. Overanalyze a piece of media no one in the right mind would spend their time doing. Now, if you've played these games, you would know that the story isn't told chronologically. As such, it can be very confusing. I'm going to do my best to put things in order, but I'm not here to give a full story summary, just an analysis. I'll hit the points I feel I need to, but if you want a full plot summary, then watch Squatch Gaming's video on it, which I will link in the description. It all begins in 1985, with a war between the Soviet Union and the United States. The Soviets have invaded Hawaii, and the main group in the US military defending the island are known as the Wolves. Miraculously, there are only 4 members of this group, but the only 2 we really need to focus on are known as Jacket and Beard. I'll get to Jacket in a minute, but for now let's talk about Beard. He's the lieutenant of the squad, but he doesn't like fighting. He wants to get out of the war and simply relax by running a bar or a grocery store or really anything that will let him forget about all the fighting. But the colonel is making that future look impossible. He is constantly sending the wolves into suicide missions, yet they survive only to be sent into even more unwinnable battles. Through it all though, Beard fights with a cold heart. He doesn't want to think of all the people he's killed as real people, because that would be too hard. He's one of only 2 characters that are reluctant to kill people and only do it out of necessity. Specifically because of the colonel and his love for violence. It's not directly told to the player, but the colonel is the person who began the 50 Blessings organization in order to spread violence and hostility throughout America and the world. But we aren't there yet, so for now, the only agents he has are the Wolves. On their final mission, the Wolves are able to take down the biggest Soviet base in the area, and Jacket and Beard earn their leave. Jacket heads to Miami, while Beard is able to open up a shop in San Francisco. The two remained friends through phone calls and the wars behind them. Or so it seems to be. Even though they left the fight, it didn't leave them. And in 1986, a nuclear bomb is dropped on San Francisco. Beard walks out of his store and the bright light engulfs him. He watches with open eyes, not really at peace, but accepting. He always knew he wasn't special, but just a pawn in the war. He expected to die a long time ago, and time caught up with him. Jacket, though, he isn't so accepting of this. He holds onto the picture he took with Beard during their time in Hawaii as a constant reminder of what the Russians did to his friend. So, when the calls start coming in, giving Jacket orders to kill the Russian mafia in 1989, he doesn't hesitate. The messages are from 50 Blessings, which hides its real purpose as an organization to spread violence and hate, as a patriotic organization harboring the citizens' hatred of Russia. Long story short, Jacket is put into a coma, where he has to relive every mission he's been on, as well as finally accept the death of Beard to wake up. When he does wake up and take down the mafia head, he accepts his fate and throws the picture of him and Beard off a balcony. He finally feels as though he won and took revenge for his friend's death. At the same time all of Jacket's events take place, a character known as Biker wants to leave 50 Blessings. This is the surprise character at the end of Hotline Miami, who only has 3 levels to his name, but he closes out the story of the first game. He finds the people who have been running 50 Blessings in Miami and kills them after finding out their game. But it's too late. They were just 2 members of a bigger system now running the country. The Colonel made a corporation bent on destruction and war. It's embedded into every city in the country, not just Miami. And now it will only make tensions grow and make peace an ever more distant reality. 50 Blessings' outreach was targeted. They wanted vulnerable people who would attack Russians with no questions asked. Jacket was an obvious choice both because Beard was killed in San Francisco and because he was a former soldier, which the organization would know since the Colonel was the founder. Biker was only in it for the fun of things, which was ideal for Blessing's real goal of simply spreading violence. And the final category they want are gullible patriots. No, not true patriots, but people who sit around and complain about how good the country used to be. Now they can finally do something with their extremist views. The character we meet that represents these people is Jake, who is a neo-Confederate with a deep hatred for Russians. He's active at the same time Jacket is, but he's too much of a loudmouth for his own good. He finds out that 50 Blessings is the same organization giving him the missions to kill Russians, leading to him being taken care of. Jake in the story represents something much larger than himself. His story is a microcosm of the entire Hotline Miami tale. He kills for what he believes to be a good reason, and the people above him decide when his usefulness is done by killing him. The violence and hatred he felt led him to become a puppet by 50 Blessings. When the time came, he was put into the position he felt he was above. He used to be the butcher, but now he was the cattle. And in truth, we are all the cattle. Those in a position of power could end us at any moment, and there was always someone above you, despite how many people you may be above yourself. So, is that it then? Is Hotline Miami all about nihilism? Spreading the idea that violence is good and justified since there is no real reason not to do it? No, it's not. Jake went by a saying, "Never again another San Fran." He fought to keep another catastrophe from occurring to his country. He fought for the right cause, with the wrong reasons and the wrong method. So, is there anyone who fought for the right cause, with the right reasons, with the right method? And no, not really. But we get damn close. I mentioned earlier that Jacket was put into a coma. But how? It was by a character named Richter. He's another person roped into 50 Blessings due to being so vulnerable. He's all alone in this world. The only person he has is his ill mother, whom he spends all of his time taking care of. When the calls first come in, he ignores them, until the organization destroys his car and threatens his mother. Like Beard, he must do the wrong thing by giving in to the violence, but he does it to protect his mother. He openly regrets what he has to do, apologizing to Jacket for what he had to do, and even telling his story to the press so others can learn what 50 Blessings really is. When looking at things from his perspective, he's the tragic hero, but nothing is ever from only one person's perspective. Richter is still responsible for dozens of murders. He still gave in to the violence, no matter the reason. But for him, it wasn't about the violence, but always what waited for him at home. Whether or not you consider this justified, to Richter it was. To him, it was an act of righteousness to protect his mother. She was all he ever had, and he wasn't about to lose that. And this is what Hotline Miami is really about. We have no idea what other people are going through. They could be suffering, or deranged, or simply brainwashed. But if humanity has any universal solution to its problems, it would be violence. We fight, we hurt, we kill, for reasons that seem justified to us. Yet, that doesn't make the ends justify the means. Spreading violence simply because that's all we'll ever do deep down as humans, as animals, doesn't accomplish anything. We need to have a reason for what we do. Violence is inevitable in life. It'll either be inflicted upon you, you'll inflict it on someone else, or both. No matter why it happens, though, it will simply lead to more violence unless you break the chain. Hotline Miami wants you to be the one to break the chain. The games are hard because violence should be too, so why even bother doing it? No reason for violence will ever truly be rational, so break the chain before it's too late. Richter and his mother get away to Florida at the end of the second game. They hope to live out the rest of their days in peace. Richter broke the chain in his own life by leaving 50 Blessings and hiding his mother. But it was for nothing. Russia and America have declared war, and nuclear missiles are heading towards both countries. 50 Blessings won in the end by making everyone kill each other. All of it could have been avoided if the chain was broken and violence wasn't as widespread as it had become. Richter is visited by Richard, who is some sort of god in the series, who talks with most of the characters. I won't get into a big explanation of what he really represents, but he's basically everyone's collective want for violence. He himself despises it though, wanting the characters to make the right choice and stop what they're doing. He tells Richter that leaving this world isn't as scary as it sounds. It's a bittersweet send-off for not only Richter, but for the player. Because if the world really is filled with violence, then why is leaving this home of torture such a bad thing? It's a scary thought, death, because we think of what we'll miss out on. But is it actually that scary if what we're leaving behind will have ended in violence anyhow? Who really knows? And that is why I really love this series. Because even though I don't completely agree with what I interpreted the series to mean, I think violence can be justified and rationalized in some scenarios where it is unavoidable, it still made me think. I was enjoying myself and was even proud when I killed someone in these games. And obviously, it's a video game. It won't cause me to spread any real-world violence, but maybe it's bad enough that I enjoyed killing at all, virtual or not. It's something for every person to ponder to themselves, I suppose. Also, no, I didn't even talk about half the plot in these games, and never even mentioned the fans, nor Pardo, nor several other characters. What was important for this video was my interpretation of the game's message, and I didn't really need to talk about everything in the plot to accomplish that. Maybe one day I'll do a story of fiction episode on the entire plot, because there are other things I would like to say about the series. You should subscribe to keep up to date and see when I do release that video, according to YouTube statistics on. So, why did I put the Hotline Miami Collection in the Spoons arcade? Well, it's a thrill ride that never lets up. You might bang your head against the wall a few times, but it'll make it all the more sweeter when you do win. And to accompany you along the way are some fantastic songs and an outrageous art style to make sure you never get bored. I would recommend the collection to anyone that wants a challenge, but also wants to make sure they have fun along the way. More than anything though, I would recommend it to anyone who wouldn't mind walking away from it all questioning themselves. If you play these games, make sure you're ready to ask yourself, do you like hurting other people? But overall, they're the games I love to hate. I don't completely agree with the message, I don't completely love the gameplay in Wrong Number, and I don't agree at all with some of the level designs. It makes me want to break my console sometimes, but the only reason I don't is because I won't be able to play these games again if I do. What makes it belong here to me is just how emotional it can make me, and I mean that in a multitude of ways. Good night.